Hello, friends. I come to you today with this. So, I wanted to be in my scrap room tonight and was just not feeling very crafty. And then I looked over at my scrap bin and I thought maybe it is a good time to tackle this. So, basically, I am going to start sorting, and you can watch me as I tackle this massive mountain of cardstock, pattern paper, and offcuts from my die cutting. And yeah, so this is going to happen. As I always do, I will preface this voiceover by saying I'm sorry if you hear snuffling, scratching, or snoring. The doggies are all around me and they're settling in for a little nap. So I zoomed out here so you could see exactly how much paper I'm dealing with. This is probably about, I want to say 6 to 8 months worth of scraps. And some of them I didn't really organize beforehand, but as you can see, a lot of them are just odd shapes and sizes, and there was even a Cricut mat in there. So yeah, the bin is about a 9 by 13 bin, and it's about 2.5 inches deep, and it was full. So the first thing I like to do is sort and separate branding strips, and then I also sort and separate pattern paper, which is to my left there, and then the cardstock. I used to make a lot of cards, and I'm still sort of transitioning out of card making. So a lot of the cardstock that I have is just, Michael's 8.5 by 11 cardstock, and I'll probably work my way through that. I don't tend to buy a lot of 12 by 12 cardstock anymore because I don't do as many 12 by 12 scrapbook layouts. So, all right, so this is getting to the bottom of this pile. So as you can see, the pattern paper pile is not as big. And then I just put them in Ziploc baggies. And now I'm tackling the cardstock pile. So for this one, what I like to do is separate all of my white first, and then all of the little white scraps go in that zipper pouch because I tend to use those for, if you're stamping sentiments, or if you wanted to just stamp an image that you want to color later, or that kind of thing. But there are a lot of strips in that Ziploc bag. So I have a couple of plans for ways that I can show you how to use up branding strips and those little white strips, but that'll be in an upcoming video. I'm not going to have time to do it in this one. And here you can see this is a lot of my die cuts. So I did some Halloween crafting for a baby shower, and then I never really did anything with the die cuts. And I also made presents for some of the kids at school. So a lot of the die cutting just didn't get tackled. So here you can see I'm just taking all of my white strips and just putting them in there. And now I am going to square up the offcuts from my die cutting, which is just a really easy way to handle it. I just make everything square, and then if there's anything left over, I'll tend to grab some dies or some punches, more likely, and just punch whatever might be left. And then in an upcoming video, I'll show you that's basically what I do with the pattern paper as well. So this isn't a terribly exciting video, but you can kind of get the idea of how to do this. So I may end up making some cards with some of the cardstock, but this year in 2023, I say this every single year, and every single year I fail. But I would really like to not buy anything unless it's a supply that I'm completely out of. And I'd really like to use up what I have, so stay tuned for that. So here you can see I just grabbed some of my more common punches, and because it's white cardstock, oh my goodness, because it's white cardstock, I also grabbed a snowflake punch, just because I will likely end up using some snowflake die cuts and things in the upcoming months. We're in January now, so I'm sure I'll find a use for them. But I didn't go too crazy and like make 20 snowflakes, because that's the danger. In one of my previous videos, I talked about going into batch mode. So this is kind of what I mean by batch mode. You know, you just grab a hole punch and you just die cut all of the circles, and then you just put them in a drawer somewhere and use them as you need them. So yeah, basically, I'm going to end up with a whole lot of white circles at the end of this. And I don't have a plan for them yet. Good morning. It is the next day. I decided to turn the camera off because the lighting was getting really bad in here, and hubby wanted to watch a show. So this is where I'm at. So off camera, or maybe on camera, I used some of my die punches, and I also separated some of the white scraps, and then this one is for branding strips. So I am going to now tackle, oh wait, no, I'll show you. And there's a puppy under my desk, also known as the gremlin. So I also sorted into, this is kind of like Santa baby collection. Oh, he's got a piece of paper. This is specialty papers. This is my pattern paper bag, and then the cardstock bin is still next to me. So I think I'm going to tackle the cardstock bin next. So I'm just going to clear a few things from my desk, grab my paper trimmer, and I'll be right back. In the previous segment of this video, you watched me square up some other cardstock. So I'm just basically doing it again. And a lot of these were actually quite large die cuts, so there's not actually a lot of scrap left. So I'm just squaring it up and cutting it down so it fits more neatly in that bin. I don't have a plan for any of these yet, but I'm sure I'll come up with something. This is a really great way to make your own embellishments with like scraps, and also like if you enjoy doing pocket pages and things like that, pocket pages are really easy to do when you've got scraps that are already 3x4 or 4x6 in size. Yeah, really not exciting. Some of these are even little negatives from die cuts that I used. I think I just put something in there that says week. So I may end up using those kinds of things in here too. Some of these I just decided, you know what, I've got plenty of strips and rectangles of things, so I'm just going to put them in a pile, and I'll use some punches and make circles and things like that with them. Because as you can see, there's a lot of cardstock here. It's amazing how far a package of cardstock will stretch when you need it to. Okay, so these are pretty much all squared up. There's rectangles of various sizes, and some of them are like branding strips, but I'm going to leave this bin as is, and it's already a whole lot neater than it was. So the next step is to grab my punches again and tackle this little pile. So I'm going to get this and some of the other things off my desk, and I'll be right back. If you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you've probably stumbled across some of my DIY embellishment videos. And I know that I have like a set kind of standard few different embellishments that I make. So like tickets, circles, those kinds of things. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below if you have any go-to embellishments that you just kind of seem to always end up making, because I need some new ideas. So help me out, friends. I've got a whole lot of scraps and not a whole lot of plans. Okay, so we've got some rectangles cut down, and I'm going to grab my punches for this. One of my favorite things to do at the beginning of a new year is to dig through my stash and get things organized. I think that's probably the way most of us feel. I think that makes us paper nerds. But yeah, I enjoy kind of looking through, seeing what I've got left, and challenging myself to use it in a new way. But I often end up just falling back into old routines. So I'd love to hear from you for some new ideas. The other struggle too is when you're not making cards, you realize how few embellishments you really need. Doing pocket scrapbooking, there's not a whole lot of room for embellishments, or the embellishments that you make are so small that they don't tend to put a really significant dent in any of your scraps. So I may need to switch things up a little bit and start making some more involved embellishments. That could be a good project this year. Or even using my scraps to run through my Cricut to help me make titles and things like that. So I'm coming up with some ideas, but I think it's going to take a little time to untrain my brain. Okay, so this is where we are. I'm going to put away my punches, and then I think we'll tackle the pattern paper. Okay, so the process is going to look pretty much the same for the pattern papers. I'm going to take out anything that is already a square or a rectangle, because a lot of these are already in that shape. And I'm just going to square up some of the ones like this, or maybe hole punch them. But there's actually not a lot that I die cut from this. Or maybe I already squared up the papers, but as I'm recording this voiceover, I actually had an idea for a way to use up some of my scraps that I can show you really quick. If any of you have ever made artist trading cards, they're essentially 2.5 by 3.5 rectangles of paper. So if you're someone who does like mini pocket pages, they're basically 2.5 by 3.5 would be the size that would fit in baseball card sheet protectors. So maybe I can do a little something like that, and maybe try some card sketches or something. So that would be a way to use up some rectangles from my stash. Okay, so a few more done. And any of the chunks of paper that are like in the range of 4 by 6, like this one, I would normally cut down to be a 3 by 4 card, and then it just goes in my stash and it just lives there. Sometimes I'll also do I call these Franken papers, but basically like this could be a card front. I could trim this down and make it a bookmark. I like making bookmarks for my students pretty regularly because they lose everything. So like a piece of paper like this would be perfect. I would cut it down to about a 2 by 6 size and then put something on the back, and then boom, instant bookmark. So yeah, again, that's a great size for a bookmark. So a lot of these are just a little too small for Project Life. This one I'm actually going to cut to a 3x4 because it's pretty well bang on. But yeah, some of them are too big. This looks like it's pretty close to a 6x6, so I would just leave that one. And some of the larger chunks that are almost like a 3x8, I tend to leave, but a chunk like this, I wouldn't bother wasting. Just cut that down to a 3x4. And then whatever is left just goes straight to the garbage or recycling. Because at this stage, you know, how much are you going to keep? So basically, that is the process for tackling my scrap bin. A lot of these are still a good size, and I may decide to cut them down again, but I doubt it. And then I tend to I just buy my Ziploc baggies at the dollar store, and they're bigger than a 12x12. So they will fit a full-size 12x12 paper, no problem. And then I also tend to use these for my kits. Sometimes, if I have things left over, like this branding strip pouch was actually something I thrifted. I bought these bags years ago now from, I think it was from Amazon, and they've held up well. And I keep some elements in those. And then sometimes I just keep things in a smaller Ziploc bag. It just kind of depends on what it is I'm trying to store. But basically, that is the scrap bin tackled. It's a lot more manageable now. Things aren't flowing out of it. So the cardstock I'm just going to leave loose. And then these bags of paper are just going to go there, and then the cards that I've cut down will go in my little storage. The only other thing that I have that I pulled out of this bin are large die cut pieces, and like things like this. It's a negative, but I could easily use it for a title card. And then I made some ornaments for the kids for Christmas. And then I have all of these little die cut pieces left. So I've been toying with the idea of making more Christmas cards with those. So I'm going to keep those. And then my die cut pieces that I already did. And just throwing these pretty much right in my stash. And that's that. So tackle your scraps. Don't let them get the best of you. And I will be back in 2023 with some ideas on how to use some of these probably smaller scraps. All right, friends, that's it for me for today. As always, thanks for coming to hang out with me, and I'll see you next video. Bye for now.